Hello, everyone. We are here. We made it to day 3, and it has been a powerful 3 days, a call for healing. We were joined by 9 thought leaders who stepped up to have an honest, raw, authentic, and, in my opinion, very courageous conversation. Tonight, what we're going to do is delve in with our thought leaders on their individual experiences with racism, social injustice, and inequality. If you missed one of the first 2 days, we encourage you to scroll one of our Facebook walls and take the time to watch the entire conversation. To say it's powerful really does feel like an understatement because, as Leslie Briscoe and I spoke about today, when we look at every face, there is a story behind that face. There's pain, there's joy, there have been struggles and challenges, and they've been different for each of us. So what we ask of you tonight is that you listen. You listen with an open mind and you listen with an open heart. Without further ado, before we kick off, I do feel led to jump over to our co-host and moderator, Val. Val, what's on your heart tonight? When you just think about the conversations we've had and this being our final day, what thoughts are coming up for you?
I'm so glad you asked because right before the call, and good evening to everyone, um, the first thing, two things that came to my mind as I look across this amazing panel of examples of both courage and resilience, I think to myself, wow, this is what living and leading out loud looks like. This is exactly what it looks like. If anyone's looking for the perfect picture, the perfect image, this is what it looks like. Because again, as I've said all week long, it's not easy to position yourself to be vulnerable in such a wide open space. And you said it last night, Tiara, you mentioned this conversation is not happening around a boardroom table. It's not happening in the comfort of our living rooms with people that we're familiar with and who we know. We're sharing our hearts and our experiences out into the world because, as you said, we know that healing and learning and growing happens through conversations. It happens through our willingness, our propensity to listen. And as you know, coming off of last night, oh gosh, from Dave to Monique and Rebecca and Lem, there were 4 words that actually came to me when I thought about the 4 of them. Dave brought such a consciousness, in my opinion, to this space. And he was very open about his awareness and how it's so important that we are mindful of what we say, what we do, how we feel, and that we do it in a way that is healthy and whole for us at the same time as it impacts and influences others to do the same. And so I really sat with that for a while today. And I asked myself, where am I not being intentional in my awareness of what's going on in the world? And then Monique, wow, compassion comes to my mind when I thought about what Monique shared, because Tiara, you know, the whole focus on self-care, right? Compassion for self, compassion for others. And I really do believe that we have to take care of self first. I think that a very selfless act, because we're always doing for others, is to sometimes be selfish and to take care of ourselves, because then we can give more, right, to other people. And Rebecca, the whole conversation about grief and how it's so important to learn how to navigate through those emotions and not dismiss when it's so challenging and difficult to go through trauma and difficult situations, and how she was really open and honest and even encouraged us to deal with it. it's not easy. The ebb and flow of the emotions that we go through are necessary for us to heal. And I've personally been in this situation where for the longest time, Tiara, I shared this to Tiara last night and to the panel, I thought, I used to think I was resilient until I realized that I was really good at ignoring reality. I was really good at sweeping things under the rug and just sort of, oh, let me bounce back and appear and show up with this image of who people thought I should be or wanted me to be. And so I'm really, really learning to peel back the layers, right? Of it's okay to be fully expressed, even when it feels uncomfortable. And that's what all of our panelists are doing. That's what all of these amazing people are doing. And so, I mean, Lem, wow, Lem challenged us last night through his spoken word, right? The words that keep repeating in my mind are you a part of the problem or are you a part of the solution? I went to bed thinking about that last night. Like, Val, there's so much more you can do. And while I honor what I have to offer to the world, I also realize that I have a lot more to learn. So that was that's what the thought leaders have shared with me so far. And so I am so excited about diving in tonight and learning so much more from the other thought leaders. So again, thank you, Tiara, for the opportunity to share. And to our social media audience, I'm on it. I have my phone here. I'm ready to interact with you. So as Tiara, our amazing host, continues to facilitate the conversation, know that I'm going to be on the other side here on social media. So please don't hesitate to comment and ask your questions. Our thought leaders here are ready to embrace you, to embrace your thoughts, because this is a conversation that we're in together. We're all in it together. So thank you again for the opportunity, Tiara. Thank you to this amazing group of thought leaders. I'm honored. My cup overflows, and I'll turn it back to you, Tiara.
Thank you. Thank you, Val, and thank you to everyone for participating. I shared with the thought leaders before we went live tonight that I felt very clear. Even though it's the third day and it's a lot to process, I was very intentional about what I read today, who I spoke with, and what information I took in. And I do feel very clear. And there will be another conversation. There will be another online event that happens in July. So I want to encourage everyone who's watching who may not be connected to visit tiaradestinyread.com, enter your email address, and you will receive updates and whatever information the thought leaders would like us to share with you in regards to connecting with them and their various platforms. You can look out for that information as well, because this is reciprocal and we do believe in collaborative relationships and lifting each other higher. And so if you have not taken anything away from this conversation over the last 2 days, I hope you do feel the sincerity, authenticity, and what a different type of leadership looks like, with what being imperfect looks like, what not having the answers look like, what just listening can do, what it can do to help us really understand and maybe connect some dots that we didn't even realize were there. So without further ado, we are going to jump in. Originally, I was thinking that I might talk to Miss Tammy last, but I'm going to actually start with Miss Tammy Flynn tonight, because when I was putting posts out today, what continued to pop up on Instagram, I haven't been very active, but I wanted to be intentional about putting a few IG stories out because we're on the Facebook platform, right? But I'm like, I can't just completely leave out the IG community. And so let me at least take a few minutes to pop into IG stories. Tammy's updates today continue to hit my timeline each time I did a post. And I was just reminded of her lifestyle and the many demands that Tammy carries. Tammy, can you just bring us, as we jump into the conversation, just so people have a little bit more context, can you just bring us into what life, your schedule, the demands look like before we get into race, social injustice, and inequality? Just like quick 1-2 minutes. Unmute, Tammy.
sorry about that. Thank you so much for having us all here, Tier, and bringing this together. I am a serial entrepreneur, so I own a brick and mortar business and I have employees, and traveling through COVID has been very turbulent times. But on the bigger end of things, I am a proud mom of 4, having one adult son that has significant special needs. And that be in the areas of intellectual disability as well as chronic medical needs. So we visit the hospital about 4 days a week, and we probably spend at least a part-time job's worth of time at the hospital per week and per therapy sessions and all of that. He is a young adult, now, and one of my other ventures and passions and purpose is really embracing the community of those that are differently abled. And so when we come to this full circle for me, and we're talking about discrimination and racism and all of that, and Tiara, I know me and you have talked about that over the years of just even knowing each other, is that the world of different abilities is the most discriminated population of grouping of people in the whole entire world. And so that is who I advocate for on a daily basis. And that is of every single race, age, size, and you can become part of our community at any point in time, to becoming disabled, having medical illness, and ever being life-changing. So that is a little bit of what my day looks like, from being a mom to a business owner, to also advocating for our community, patient advocate, all those things.
Thank you, Tammy. And Tammy and I met several years ago, just to bring you guys into our relationship. We met several years ago. When I kicked off my speaking career with Tori Johnson from Good Morning America. Tammy was one of the attendees at one of the 8 states that I spoke at. And Tammy and I had an instant connection, I believe, as entrepreneurs, resiliency and ambition. And I was introduced to Tammy, and she shared what she just shared with you all about her life as an entrepreneur mom and with a special needs child. Now, we have not spoken on the phone really since then, but we've interacted. She supported the business and she supported my sister, and I've seen her support several people. And so it's that social media connection that you have when you meet someone. And for me, seeing Tammy support people genuinely before it became the popular thing to do, I could speak to. But recently we got on the phone after those several years, and we spoke about some of the racial injustices and inequality, and some personal experiences that she has had recently. And we had a very candid conversation. And then I thought more about it since we had the conversation. And my question for you, Tammy, is when someone speaks about racial inequality, do you feel that you can relate when you think about the discriminatory issues you speak about with a special needs child? Do you feel that you have a better sense of understanding because of your lifestyle? Could you speak to that a little bit for me?
Sure, I definitely can. I can tell you that being in the space that I am, and, when we look at just the bare necessities and the bare needs as human beings, as I've talked to you about, one of the things that I highly advocate for state to state is adult-sized changing tables for those who are wheelchair bound, have MS, have, cerebral palsy, and need to be in a chair. They might intellectually have no issues, but mobility issues, your elderly loved ones. And the fact that we have about five changing spots if you travel throughout rest stops across the United States. When we talk about airports, you have probably about 6 airports in the United States that hub that. And when I look at those individuals of all different ages, and I think to myself, you're fighting to not have to lay your loved one on a dirty, filthy bathroom floor in the age of 2020. I, the same, feel, what I'm saying? So many of those feelings. And when I've looked at this even through the protests that have been going on, because I do think it's needed. I do think people need to get out there, and anything that you can do, actions over words, anything that you can do to change your community, leave it better than you found it, because really it is all about action. We can all sit here and talk all day, but what are we really doing, to change things that are happening? And when I looked at my community of thousands across the world, actually, that I serve with on my on-air advocate platform, and I thought to myself, you know what, where is their opening if they want to protest? Where is their opening if they want to use their voice right now?
Mm-hmm.
You cannot tell me that there are not young, old, and in the middle, individuals with intellectual disabilities or mobility issues that don't want to support this campaign of some kind,
Mm-hmm.
that don't want to get out there.
Mm-hmm.
But as always within our community, you find that there's the isolation and alienation, as you can't get into stores. There's cars you can't drive. There's, stores you can't go to. I mean, if you think about every single area of life, when we talk about mobility and intellectual disability, there's a stop mark for us, right, in that community. And so when I thought about these protests, and I've watched, and I told you about that, some of my young people in my community, they're sitting back like, okay, we want to say something. Where's their voice? You know what I'm saying? Where's the opening door? So we've started this platform, but how are we really letting everybody in? How are we, letting those young individuals be able to use their voice about racism, and for them to tell their stories, and even making protesting accommodating? How, if you have mobility issues, or you need a caregiver to walk with you because you can't, how can you go and protest? How can you do those things? And so, an interesting space to be in.
So Tammy, thank you for raising a couple of issues, and we're going to dive into those issues. So when you speak about, my initial question was, do you feel that you can relate
Yes.
to the social injustice and racism because of what you face in your life?
Yes.
Okay. And so with you feeling that way, do you feel the need that when injustice and racism is brought up, to educate people on what your reality is and some of those similarities?
Yes, sometimes.
Okay.
And sometimes when people are discussing things that I feel are unjust, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or from the other end of it, they are not being very compassionate and empathetic about the situation. I'm
When
the
you
first
say
one
the
to
situation, you mean when you say the situation, they're not being empathetic about your situation
about this situation. You know what I'm saying? About Black Lives Matter. When we're talking about well, why would people be protesting? Why would they be doing this?
Mm-hmm.
I try to bring some perspective,
Okay.
that I can.
So Tammy, the thing is that I want to share that a couple of people have shared some concerns is that, and it happened to me recently, when we're talking specifically about racism and injustice, when we bring up a different topic,
right,
of social injustice or the struggles that you're having with a special needs child, do you feel that it's deflecting, or do you feel that it's being less empathetic towards the person who's talking about the racial issues? Or do you feel that you're wanting to relate or let them know that, what is your intention? That's a better question. What's your intention when someone talks about race? But what are you feeling that, what's your intention when you bring up, well, I have a special needs child and there are only changing tables in 5 airports. That's what came up in our conversation. So I want the world to know, because this is not just me and you. And imagine what it feels like for 2 people who can't have that conversation on the phone. Someone in the workplace, someone talking about race, and then someone brings up another issue in the boardroom, and we don't make progress. So when you bring it up, what is the intention? So that may help us understand when other people do that.
I would say that within this space, if someone is talking to me about the Black Lives Matter, if we're talking about the protesting, unless they engage into that conversation to want to have a further conversation, how is your community feeling? How are the young people in your community feeling?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the one to start that. So it's not as if when I see that, that's the answer that I'm giving back to it or posting or not supporting. It is when we engage in a conversation about things that are going on, like as I see our young people in our community wanting to do more, wanting to get out there. You know, I had been searching around for different things for them to actively be involved in the Black Lives Matter movement.
Mm-hmm.
And I found one small thing that took place, you know what I'm saying, within that. So myself was going to bring a board together of them to be able to express it and talk about it.
Okay. Because what it felt like, well, I'll bring it around.
Mm-hmm.
You shared something that I think is powerful. We can leave names out of this, okay? Because you stepping up is what's most important, and I respect that. But when we spoke on the phone, you brought up Karen,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And you brought up a situation where you were thinking about doing some type of transaction. Can you share that very brief story with the thought leaders? And then what's most important is how that made you feel when you have been supporting. Bring us into what happened and then how it felt, because right after that conversation, the changing tables came up. So that's why I'm making that connection. For me, it sounded like there was the pain of, wow, you know, I'm trying to support, this is happening to me. Who's asking about these other things? And I heard you say that a few minutes ago. Where is the opening for this conversation? So we want to value and validate your struggles, but we want to make sure that, you know, this doesn't happen and create more division when someone is expressing their pain, you know, and it feels like a deflection. So
Right.
what were you sharing with me about Karen and your situation?
Within the space that I'm in, obviously, there is a lot of diversity, you know, within the population that I serve. And
Right.
within that, there's never been a time ever in my life that I have ever stopped to say, well, I'm not going to do this, kind of like when I met you, Tiara, you know, and I came home to have your stuff at my store and to do the stuff. It wasn't even a thought. It wasn't a thought like I'm doing business, you know, with someone of a different color. That wasn't a thought in my head ever, and it never is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and in this space, as this has started to happen, there are different business engagements.
As
That
what has started to happen, Tammy?
is that there, I feel like there's this push or this, I guess you'd say, a divide. And so as I was seeking out some services from someone, you know, and it seemed like very genuine. Her conversation with me, and you know, Tara, you talk about that all the time, you know, like when you feel someone's heart and you feel where they are, and I was like, oh, we're connected. Like I feel so good about this, like we're here and
Right.
talking about this. And we even talked about environments and growing up a little bit, and it was like, that's great, because that's what it's all about, respecting each other.
So
And
you had gotten on the phone with this
yeah,
potential service provider. You felt
yes, I actually did a Zoom twice for
so
about
face to face with the service provider, you felt connected, and then what?
yes. And then I started to see, you know, on business pages and business things, a lot of this in negativity, you know, and doing TikToks that, you know, are making jokes about not being a Karen and not being a this. And I'm like, well, that's not nice.
What was the negativity that you read on the business page?
That being it.
The fact that she used the word Karen or he?
It was a joking, it's a joking meme that's out on TikTok talking about it.
And so do you personally feel attacked when someone is talking about Karen?
I feel like anything that is unkind, I think that we have made such a campaign within the United States of America to be kind. you know, and especially in your business world and the way you collaborate, or even like I said, in calling out, you know, my white friends, you know, or not even, or white people. Like, I just,
Tammy, who made the campaign of to be kind? I just want to make sure I'm following your train of thought, because my reality could be different than yours. So you're teaching.
within our school systems, within our educational system, within the movie, you know, Wonder, I mean, we've, over the last years, I mean, to stop bullying, to be kind to one another, and to raise that awareness, you know, that what are we doing to our children? What are we doing to our young people by impacting them with that negativity, being bullied at school? And that can be whatever color you are, right? So that can be the way you.
So anybody posting about Karen or memes about Karen, it rubbed you away and it didn't feel like kindness. That's what you're saying.
I just, you know, you're correct. I don't feel like that is kind. I don't feel, and it's not saying that other people don't do things. You know what I'm saying? From.
No, we're just talking about you, Tammy, because Tammy,
Right.
This is the thing. It's not a right or wrong answer. Like, seriously,
Right.
Your reality is different than my reality. Your reality is different
Right.
than everyone on here. So whatever your truth is, and whatever emotions come up for you when you see the Karen TikTok, they matter. They matter. And when you shared that with me, you were sharing your reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, Tammy, so you don't want to do business with this person that was speaking about Karen. Is that correct?
It made me very much stop to think, because there was other things, obviously, talking about, you know, I've heard from a lot of, just in the business world, they've put out there like, well, you only want to do business with Black businesses, you know? And I think to myself, you know, Tiara, when I met you, you know, your sister doing business, you know, I'm thinking those aren't things that are in my mind and never were. And so I think it brings us to a place, I feel like in a lot of ways, for those that never had any kind of even thought about it, right? For those that are change makers in their communities, for those, and what I was
talking about, white change makers in their communities.
I'm talking about all change makers. You know what I'm saying? Like when we're putting any type of divide on something, I feel like that isn't integrating us, you know what I'm saying, as much together. It's not bringing us together. And that's just, you know, that's my heart. And that's, you know what I'm saying, my feelings on that. I've never had a point that I've ever had a different thought. You know, I've never, there's never been a point. And that's what, you know, would take back to, you know, when I talked about growing up in the most segregated city in the United States, I've never, even at that point, growing up, you know, in that way, I've never, like, I was offered a position to take care of kids, you know, which I love, through Catholic Social Services when I was a teen.
And Tammy, that's what I appreciate about you. And I'm so grateful that I have some background information about you before this conversation. So I thank you for allowing me to ask you honest questions, because I value your truth. Okay. That does not mean I agree with everything. I have pushed back. Okay. But guess what? I am not judging you right now, but I'm going to ask you honest questions. And if anything ever feels uncomfortable, you are helping someone with your truth. Okay, Tammy? Because what you see, you're not the only person that is living life from your perspective. So if you don't speak up, that person could feel the same way that you said a few minutes ago. Where's the open door for my voice? That might be you tonight. So I'm encouraging you to be honest, okay? Don't look for a safe or right or wrong answer. I'm okay. I'm fine, okay? So I value your truth. I just want to say that. I want to make sure I'm understanding you hearing about Karen. This is how I'm processing it. You reading the post, seeing the memes, hearing about Karen led you to not want to do business with this African-American service provider, which right before the post, you were planning to invest several $1,000s.
Yes, it made me pause, is what it made me do. you know, and I haven't unfollowed or any of those things. I don't unfollow people, so I don't do that, no matter who you are. You know, if I was your friend at one time, I'm still your friend. You know, I don't do that. But it's made me pause. It definitely has made me pause to think, you know, I want to engage in things that are truly open relationships. You know, like as me and you have had discussions before, you know, like open, and you can speak your truth. You can talk to each other about it. Because I think that some of this also, as we look at things, respecting each other and figuring out where people grew up, what is their background, and listening and being the listeners. I think that you have to take a step back and do that as well.
Thank you.
May I take the opportunity, Tiara, please, if you don't mind? There is so much conversation going on, not only in our group, but also on social media. If you can explain, either Tammy or you, the concept, if you will, of the Karen.
Okay.
There are a lot of people who don't understand that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Tammy, can you explain what Karen means to you?
I didn't even know what the Karen, I didn't know what the Karen even meant.
When you see it, what's upsetting to you? What does it mean for those people who don't know what Karen is? What does it mean to you?
From the vision of it, just looking, it's kind of like saying to somebody like you're, I don't want to use the word dumb, or, you know, some people use, I don't know if it's not a positive word. I don't know how to put a descriptor on it. Like I told you when I heard it, and I think I told you this on the phone, we were talking, I didn't even know, I said it didn't look positive. I asked my kids about it.
You told me that Karen to you, when you looked at it,
a dumb white woman.
What?
Like a dumb white woman.
Correct. So that's how you take it when you see it posted, right?
Right. But I mean, I feel like that was one instance of one word. There have been, you know, other things that I've just looked at, and I'm just like, my biggest thing is that in our world, our greatest thing that we can contribute to each other, aside from listening, is compassion and empathy and being kind. Tammy. And so I just think that as we put out negativity, instead of like things like this, where you are trying to educate, have open conversations, be respectful with each other, I feel like
that's not helping.
Like kind of win-win. You know what I'm saying? When we don't do that.
Tammy, are you open to a one-on-one conversation with me outside of this series?
Oh, sure.
Okay, because I have so many questions for you at this point. And the reason why is because I've seen the service that you do in the world. I've seen your heart. But when I listen to you today, if I didn't know that, if I hadn't seen it, I might have a different opinion. And I have a couple of questions, and I don't want to say, Tammy, keep it short if you're not able to. So I don't want to do that injustice, okay? But Tammy, do you feel you have white privilege?
I would probably say no. But then again, until this came about, and you know, I mean, I've had conversations, and there, I feel as if now there are so many like, I don't want to call them buzzwords, but there's like all of these words versus conversations.
And Tammy, I am publicly giving you the opportunity for us to continue this conversation, okay? So after you think about this and you come back and watch it, we can talk again. It doesn't even have to be a formal series. We can do it whenever. My next question, when you say, no, I don't feel white privilege, the life you live right now, the demands you have, getting up every morning, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, the hospital 4 days a week, correct, right? You said there's injustice and challenges you deal with every day. And it sounds like you equate it to someone that might have different challenges, but you have challenges. Okay. That's what it feels like sometimes when you're educating. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
With that, do you feel a Black woman living your life would feel the same or have even more challenges that you have with your demands? If she woke up at 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. and did the hospital 4 times a week and did everything you do with the spa and everything you do with the nonprofit, would she have additional challenges if the only difference was her skin color?
I would say from open conversations that I have had with very close friends of color, we talk about the same things, you know what I'm saying? And they don't express that to me. We have very open, real conversations. And when I speak to those challenges, I'm not speaking about me. My son doesn't even use a changing table anymore as an adult. Okay. So
Right.
when I'm talking about others, I'm talking about supporting everyone. You know what I'm saying?
Equality.
Supporting everyone.
So for you, race is really not a factor. It's equality for all.
Right.
So
And
are you Black Lives Matter? Are you All Lives Matter? Are you when you hear Black Lives Matter, do you feel like I could see where all lives matter because we're cutting people out? Where do you stand when you hear those two different statements?
I feel like Black lives do matter. I do feel like growing up in the most segregated city in the United States, that there are injustices.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I can tell you, and we didn't even get into that,
Right.
what our side of, north side of Milwaukee looks like, what our south side of Milwaukee looks like. I can, you know what I'm saying? That's a whole issue within itself. And there is a lot of issues that go on in those areas. So Black lives do matter.
So when you hear Black, do you shout Black Lives Matter, or do you come back with, but all lives matter? I'm just trying to understand, Tammy. Do you protest for Black Lives Matter? Would you have signs up, in your yard, Black Lives Matter? I'm just trying to understand. It's no wrong answer.
I have equality for all.
Okay.
So and that is, and especially being within the space of all advocacy for everyone of every age and every race and every place in every state in the world.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That is where I go, because I'm going to campaign for you. If you came to me, Tiara, and you said, I need your help with this, Tammy, can you send this out? Can you call this place? Can you do this with me?
Yeah. And I know you would. I know you supported my business, but would you protest Black Lives Matter with me? Would you hold up that sign?
If you asked me to.
You wouldn't, but nothing inside of you would lean towards equality for all.
What I would do is what I have done, trying to develop programs and bring awareness and help for the things that God has gifted me in to be able to do to our Black community. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen it to the actual area.
And I've seen you support Tammy. So we're not strangers where you're trying to prove that you love, different races outside of your race. But what I feel led to share, and we definitely should continue the conversation so you can get more of the background, the city, the borders, the segregation, all of that. But Tammy, one thing that I sat with and I pushed back in our conversation, and then I'm going to move to the next person, is that something inside of you, it did not even feel right that someone was posting the negativity about Karen, right? And you said, I don't want to give this person thousands of dollars who's posting all of this. And what did I say to you, Tammy? Black people do it every day.
You said you've experienced it.
We don't have a choice in some instances. When there are only certain service providers, when there's microaggression at work, and that's how you're feeding your children, then we have to figure out a way to still survive, even though the negativity, right? So when I hear you say, but kindness, I ask myself, Tammy, what campaign of kindness? Are you talking about our faith and, humanity and love and equality? But are we acknowledging that the racism is just as real? And and you have Black friends, I know you do. I know you do. But your Black friends, like you said, are not expressing anything different than what you've experienced. When I just asked you if their life would be harder or any more challenged if their skin was Black, doing the hospitals and everything that you do. And you said, no, I don't feel that. And that's not being communicated to me. And what I love about this, Tammy, is it's your truth. So how can I expect you to understand where I'm coming from with certain conversations if we don't listen to each other?
Right.
When I hear someone shout all lives matter, when I shout Black lives matter, how would I understand where that's coming from without this conversation? I could make assumptions, right? But you today are sharing your voice and your truth, and I thank you for it. I really suggest that we continue the conversation because we didn't get into the segregation. But Tammy, I'm really not here for that piece of it. You and what you shared, your reality, your mindset, your belief system, your values, and having a safe space to share what that is and how you feel when you see Karen. I asked you, so do you think that's close to how it feels when a Black person hears the word nigger? Did I not say that on the phone? What was your response? You said, well, I guess it could, maybe.
I don't remember you saying that, but because I don't even use that.
I did. I said that when you said you feel that way when you see Karen, I said, would you liken it to this? Because I was trying to understand, does it bring up an emotion of disrespect, dishonor, generalization when they don't know you? I've lived that. I have lived that. I can't speak for every Black person, but I've lived that. I've had someone pull up next to me and just call me a nigger to my face at a red light. You know that, Tammy? I had a Bible in the seat, the passenger seat, and I held that up. But I can't say that wasn't hurtful, humiliating, rage, anger. So I'm not justifying Karen. I'm just asking people to open their minds and hearts to walking in someone else's shoes when it happens every day.
Right.
Well, and they don't have a choice.
If I can just one more thing to lead in with that. When I said that, I feel that I followed up. I don't think that it's right on anywhere.
Right, you did. You said,
and when I've seen things, negativity on either side.
Right.
Because I told you there is so much anger, there's so much pain, there's so much negativity, and there is so much unkindness, in both ways. And how is that helping us? How is that helping us leave the world better than we found it? When, I'm saying both sides are saying things. And
right.
So this is not that I discount in any way any names or things that people say negative on either side. I think
you didn't take a side, Tammy.
Right.
You didn't take a side. You didn't take a side, Tammy. I asked you that question. I did that to open your mind up to what those emotions could feel like if that was your reality. You did not say that was okay. By no means did you say that was okay. You said, I stay away from that. I worked in a place, I was the only white woman. You took me into that conversation, and we will have it. So Tammy, thank you for your truth tonight. Thank you for your truth, because we will have an amazing conversation. And I believe that we're going to find some middle ground to hear something different, some missing piece that may open your heart, my heart, to a different perspective. No one is right or wrong for their truth. Thank you so much, Tammy. And I will be waiting for that email, okay? Thank you. Guys, I need just 30 seconds because Tammy's courage tonight and truth 4 kids. You know, Tammy, I don't even know what time you get up in the morning. I don't want to ask that because then we're going to go into some. Tammy thinking about equality in her perspective is real. We cannot judge a person from their reality and their truth. And I wouldn't want anyone to do that with me. I see tears. I do. And I can't thank you all enough for your truth. There is no right or wrong. This is a safe space. This is a safe space. And I mean that, guys. I am imperfect. I'm sitting here trying to honor my emotions and honor, you know what, for people watching this, if you get upset and you storm out, you get upset and you throw things, we leave the same way we came. So when you hear something or you hear something you don't agree with, or you don't understand, emotional intelligence, peace, love, self-awareness allows you to stay in the room, but honor your emotions. If you can't honor it, like Monique said, but we will not make progress without these conversations. And these conversations will not go to the next point without respect. Respect. Tammy, you don't know how honest you were tonight and how many people you may be speaking for tonight. And I thank you. And I thank you for supporting me before this became a news headline. And I mean that. I'm learning something new about you. You're learning something new about me. Do I acknowledge Karen? I acknowledge Karen. Does that make you not want to have a conversation with me, do business with me? If that's your truth, I will respect it. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend neutral. Karen for me is not a dumb white woman. For those asking, Karen for me is the white woman that weaponizes her race. So Karen for me, Tammy, just so you know, on this public platform, and guys, forgive me, everybody else, I'm just really being real in this moment. I can't keep it at 10 minutes if my heart is not. I get it. And Rebecca, if you can't pass the tissues through the screen, you're just gonna have to stop, because I'm trying to keep it together. Tammy, Karen for me was Amy Cooper. That's where I saw the Karen come out. Not a dumb white woman, okay? Ignorant, yes, but it was beyond ignorance. It was hate.
Right.
That man could have been murdered had the wrong police or different police officers showed up. So for me, Karen, in that scenario, and when I see it, represents the woman who does recognize and acknowledge white privilege and will use it as a weapon by any means necessary. That's what Karen means to me. If I post about it and it offends you, if I post about it and it offends anyone else, that's what it means to me. It's not all white women, and it's not dumb white women. So Tammy, I'll process, we'll have an honest conversation. Thank you. Valerie, I have to jump over to you. And guys, you already gave me permission for an extra 30 minutes tonight. I thank you for that. We are flowing organically, a lot to process. This is the last night. Valerie, can you just give us 2 minutes of what's going on social media?
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, let me just start here with some of the comments, because that was a heavy conversation. And that's what's coming through the comments here from our social media audience. Vorlia Channy. Tammy, this is directly to you. I'm going to read it out loud. She says, Tammy, you are very courageous, and I appreciate your willingness to participate on this forum. She says, may I suggest that you allow that courage that enables you to be present here to afford you the opportunity not to try to convince other people of your justification to share in this conversation. So I just want to share that with you. And then we have a lot of Tammy, I applaud you. Thank you. So brave. We certainly have some good dialogue here around this whole Karen, the concept of Karen. It sounds like that's a conversation that absolutely needs to continue. Joanna D. Samuel says this is a very deep conversation. And Dawn Bramlett says, thank you, Tammy, for your share, for your truth. So again, there's a lot of curiosity from our social media world, Tiara. They are really, really leaning into this. This is
When you
truly
say
raw and
curiosity, Val, when you say curiosity, I didn't hear any questions. Are there any questions out there, or what? Where are you getting that?
sure, yeah. So there was the big question, and more of the questions that were coming in was about a lot of people didn't understand the Karen and the Becky concept, right? So took the opportunity to explain that, and I also put something in the comments, which people seem to appreciate, just having a reference point.
Okay.
And then there is a specific question from a LaShonda Petra. She says she's having trouble having these conversations with her children. And as a parent, it could be, I guess, from anyone on the panel, Tiara, who are parents. Certainly, Tiara, you have children, but she just wants some advice about how do you start the conversation with the kids? Because of course, they're not really living in a bubble, so to speak. I mean, they're hearing and they're seeing what's going on in the media. And the kids are asking questions very similar to Dave's children that he mentioned last night, right? Very curious and wondering, what does all this mean for me in my age? And I don't understand. And so any advice from, I guess, Tiara, anyone on the panel, you may want to pose it to someone particular. You may want to own that question.
Thank you. Thank you, Valerie. We're going to actually, we will address it if we have time, but that did come up in my spirit, and it may be with a different series. We may organically come up tonight, and I do have that. And so that's just confirmation. I want to thank Tammy again, because you are not here, Tammy, to justify, explain, or to agree with anybody else's life. You brought me into your world. You brought the world into a peek, a snippet of your shoes. And I thank you, because there's so many millions of people who would not have the courage to just be authentic. Thank you, Tammy. I feel led to really jump over to Pastor Kim. Pastor Kim, thank you so much for being a part of this circle. Thank you so much for being here. Pastor Kim, what are you thinking and feeling right now?
I was thinking and hoping I wasn't next because of what I'm feeling right now. That your conversation with Tammy is a perfect example of what's going on. And it's a perfect example, I think, of the problem and the solution all wrapped up in one. Because at first, and I'm just going to be honest, I was wanting you to stop. Because I felt like my heart was going out to Tammy, and I was trying to feel her. I felt within me to protect her. And I don't know if there was a need for that or not, but I'm just being transparent. But the more I settled into the conversation, and this has been my fear, and you and I talked about this, the more you got into the conversation, and I asked the Holy Spirit, reveal to me what am I feeling? What's going on here? And he said to me, this is what you have been asking for. This is what you have coined in some of the things that you've written as the solution, the conversation, the understanding, the ability to press past the feeling of it. Because if we wait until we feel comfortable for conversations like this, we'll never have them. And we'll walk away and will be just as blind and just as upset and just as angry, or even more so than when we entered into the conversations. And so I appreciate you. I appreciate Tammy for this moment, for me. For me.
Pastor Kim, we're going to give you a break. We're not going to proceed with your questions because I do want to honor your emotions and let you sit in that. And I thank you for validating what Tammy and I are modeling. If I didn't have the relationship that I have with Tammy, I cannot say that I would be comfortable because I know her walls. She knows my walls. We care more about each other than being right on a public platform. But what we're able to do is honor our individual truths and perspectives and agree to disagree on some things. I personally believe that a lot of things that I've seen in the community is that as soon as we disagree, there's rage, anger, people shut down. And I understand a lot of what's suppressed, but I've also seen emotional intelligence modeled for those people who've been exposed and had the privilege to have that type of training. So I'm not going to judge someone that has not had corporate America emotional intelligence training, and they've had to live with years of suppressed anger. They've not had to do counseling sessions and walk in the park and all of the hundreds of pages of journaling that I've done to even sit here and have this conversation. So I'm not going to judge someone that can't have this conversation.
Yeah.
But when we can have it, what I appreciate about what you said, Pastor Kim, is that are we going to model it? Are we going to press forward? Are we going to press the envelope when it gets uncomfortable? It got uncomfortable for me.
Yeah.
Tammy, did it get uncomfortable for you? Because you deal with, so guys, if you really knew what her life was like every day, she's strong, but that doesn't mean that we don't have emotions because we're resilient. So I continue to listen to Tammy's tone and pay attention to her body language. Some people don't care. As soon as you disagree, they're calling you names. Their tone is getting loud. They're judging you, and it becomes an argument. Tammy, how do you feel at this moment?
I feel like I'm so glad that other day, because we've had two conversations, you know what I'm saying? And remember when we were on the phone the other day and we're like, we need to have this right on. We had a difference and we misunderstood each other. And it wasn't about the first conversation, and we misunderstood each other.
We had a collaboration. Bring it into context. So very transparent. And so we don't want to leave it to a potential collaboration before this conversation. And the way the email came across to me didn't work for me.
Yeah.
And then when I talked to Tammy, she said, well, the fact that it didn't work for you and you were willing to just walk away from it didn't sit well with me. And I said, call me. How many people go back and forth with 10 emails and it just becomes the Grand Canyon divide? So Tammy and I have already pressed walls, PK, and for anybody watching. And so because of our personalities, we could handle this. There are people, millions of people who've never seen two people disagree and not disrespect each other. So I thank every thought leader because we've all been examples of that. But more so, me and Tammy right now are not on the same side of the street with this conversation. Mm-hmm. But just because I'm not on the same side of the street with the person, me personally, I don't discount the whole person. I don't forget how they have been there for me. I use the things that they have done to hopefully be the connector to have a real conversation and not convince, but to ask that we listen. That's it. Like Lem said, we have to choose our energy. Thank you so much, Tammy. Thank you, PK.
Can
Do
I
you
say
need
something?
time, or would you like to keep going, PK?
I would
Okay.
love to my first to
So
continue.
we're gonna shift a little bit. You know, me and Tammy are entrepreneur women, and that comes with a whole different level of mental, emotional communication. You know, that it's an obstacle course being an entrepreneur. It's an obstacle course. It's not all sunshine and roses. It's a lot, and you have to. It's self-awareness journey for sure. Pastor Kim, before we even started tonight, I had some questions that came up in my spirit for you based off our private conversation. And I think it's very relevant because you are a pastor. And when we get into a faith-based conversation, and you also have race, social injustice, and inequality in that same conversation, I have seen so many faith-based leaders walk the other direction. They won't touch it with a stick. I was confused by that, right? But my relationship with you, I made an assumption about you. I assumed that you would be just as vocal and on fire about the injustices as I see you do on your lives when you're praying. And I felt like this is someone that speaks up for herself and her truth. And it's always faith-based. It always roots back to your belief in honoring God. So when we got on the telephone and you shared some things with me surrounding the Ahmaud jogging murder, I was shocked. Can you, in 1 or 2 minutes, share before the murder, after the murder, your initial response, and then response after Justin?
Sure. So previous to Ahmaud Arbery, my perspective has always been that social injustice was a terrible thing. And my heart went out to anyone and everyone that found themselves at the hands of that and experiencing that firsthand. And I would say behind the scenes, I was very upset about it, very vocal in my private space, but not vocal in a public space. Not because I wasn't aware of it, but because I had not found my voice in it. And as a woman of faith, as a pastor, there were always some major concerns for me really quick. One of them was that I always want to represent God well. And whatever I do, wherever I show up, that's my primary goal and focus, that I represent God and the kingdom well. And I also wanted to speak to issues from an informed position, and I have not always felt informed enough. And the third thing is that I did not want to be misunderstood. I did not want anyone to misconstrue my position as a woman of faith. I always wanted it to be very, very evident and clear that it was faith first, and it's always faith first for me and my relationship with God. And so those are some of the things that made me hesitant to publicly speak out about some of these things. Now, fast forward to Ahmaud Arbery, and I remember the day.
Can I jump in? I'm sorry.
Sure.
I didn't think that I would, but I do feel led to, because you made a very interesting point.
Sure.
Privately, you felt rage. I don't think you used the word rage, but when we spoke on the phone, was it to the level of rage privately?
I don't know if I would use rage. I think I would use sadness, disappointment, hurt, even anger.
Okay.
Um,
You were angry privately.
yeah.
Am I understanding from a faith-based leadership perspective that you were honoring anger privately, but not publicly because you did not want it to be perceived a certain way or taken out of context or judged if it was expressed publicly?
If I did it in a way that was not pleasing unto God, that's my primary thing. Again, I want anything that I do, I want to make sure that I'm doing it as unto the Lord. Everything that I do has to have that foundation for me. So that was my primary concern.
Okay, so privately, was it pleasing to God?
You're asking that question, was it pleasing?
Privately.
Yeah, I don't feel like it was displeasing. I don't feel like I was doing anything that was contrary to my faith or contrary to what I was called to do.
Okay, so whatever that looked like privately, you were concerned that it could be misconstrued publicly.
Only because in public, for me, being who I am, I feel like, again, I needed to be well informed. In a private setting, I'm with me. I'm with my family. Because of who I am and because of the amount of influence that I have and the people that are connected to me, I feel as if I owe it to be before I speak on anything, to be well informed, and again, to make sure that I'm representing my faith well.
Okay.
And at that time, I didn't feel I had those words or that language.
Good. So what Monique was teaching us last night is you were honoring what you felt and going through that and allowing that to be your personal experience. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Okay. So when we spoke on the phone, it felt like, and Monique gave us some language around it, right? We didn't have that language even when we spoke. So you were going through that, but what I'm hearing though is how many other faith-based leaders could be in that. There's so many different angles we could take this, PK, but what I'm saying, PK is Pastor Kim, guys, for those. So PK, so basically, how many other people could be honoring what they feel, but then feel silenced by their role? That's just something that I'm thinking about.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why, and I kind of have to refer to David. He made a statement last night about feeling as if he shouldn't be in on the conversation, right? And prior to this, I can relate to that from a different perspective. But in the recent occurrences and my experiences, what I have found is that I have a responsibility to be in this space and that I have a voice in this space for those other faith-based leaders who might be in the shadows feeling the same way that I have felt in times past. That my speaking up and being in this space will give them permission to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Because it's necessary.
Thank you. Yeah. And what sparked it, because I want to jump into another question, is that your son, you were privately honoring your space, but you hadn't really said anything publicly. You hadn't really stood up for what those emotions were. And I said, PK, this has been happening for years. This isn't the first murder. So
Right.
Has this been a challenge and a struggle? And what it sounded like to me was, we got into this piece of the conversation. How do you express anger as a faith-based leader when I'm teaching, right? You said it challenged what you were teaching. Can you better explain that in your own words, what you were saying and then where you are now?
I was saying that as a woman of faith, I am at my core a nurturer. I love people. And so the Bible tells us that we can be angry and sin not. And so for me, I had to find that place where my anger, even in my anger and in my disdain for what's going on, to still have that space and place where I still did it from a place of love. so that I didn't mess up or misconstrue that. That's the foundation of who I am, and what I do is love, because God is love. And so there's no way that I can adopt everybody else's approach, how everybody else deals with it. I had to really come to a place to find the language, and I'm still doing it. Right. The language of Pastor Kim and this woman who wants to advocate for these social injustices and still be loving and kind to everyone. I mean, those are a lot of balls to keep in the air and to juggle and to do it the right way. But you have to be brave enough to go out there and to try it. And even in light of the fact that you might fall flat on your face, you do it anyway, because from the experience you learn. And that's what this is about for me. Because let me tell you, the saying that says, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Can I tell you that this panel has been a panel of teachers for me over the last couple of nights, and I have learned so much, and it has empowered me, let me tell you, to be able to stand in a place that's more, that I can identify better as far as where I stand.
Thank you. And that's who you are. You've been that way since the day we met. I think I was facilitating a When Women Heal event, and you were in the audience. Our very first encounter, and both of us, we honor being students. We're life students.
Oh, yes.
We respect that a lot. And I believe this entire panel, as thought leaders, we think, we process, and we are always learning in hopes of growing and sharing and connecting. Pastor Kim, I just want to go back to something though, because I feel like, a lot of people are in that space, like you said, and I just commend you for being so transparent and saying, I'm still trying to figure it out. When we talk specifically about the role as a pastor and speaking up for injustice, but let's go beyond the injustice to anger. Okay. Mm-hmm. You felt anger with the murder that you witnessed on television, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And with the murder, you felt the anger, but you questioned how to express anger when I teach love. Is that correct?
No, I didn't question it. I knew it's something that I had to master.
You didn't know how to express it.
It was something that I needed to master. There are no other options. For me, there are no other options except to be able to express anger from a place of love.
So, okay. Because for what it sounded like, and I think when we spoke on the phone, is that you weren't honoring the anger. It was almost like, for me, I think what we got to after you went to the protest and someone gave you the words, the language, you were like, that's it, T. The injustice is real. The anger was real, but I didn't have the words. And how many people out there, Pastor Kim, equate God with love, but that does not mean you deny anger. Are we on the same page with that? Like, we're on the same page with that, right?
Oh, absolutely. We cannot deny anger.
Okay.
No.
It's how we express the anger, because anger is not good or bad. It's how we express anger that's what you were processing for yourself.
Absolutely.
And being responsible with your platform of influence.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so now that you're in that space and you're still going, what is your advice for someone who is at the beginning of that? They're silent right now because they don't know how to honor the anger.
Oh, yeah. Education and awareness. and platforms like this and exposing yourself to the things that you fear. I remember when I was in school and I was doing a practicum for the counseling, and I asked a professional psychiatrist this question, what's one thing that he could tell me that would really benefit me in my career? And he said, find the anger and then follow it. When you're dealing with your clients, find that place, not anger, I'm sorry, find that place of fear and then pursue it. That place of fear. Because if you pursue it, you'll find the underlying causes or the underlying things that are driving that. And that's where the healing comes from. So the fear is a symptom of something that is deeper. And so instead of running from it, follow it.
Well,
And I use that.
And I love that. And I'm going to take you back to it wasn't anger that you were running from. You said that it was the judgment. So you feared the judgment, not the anger. You said that it was I did not want it to be misconstrued. I was concerned about the perceptions if I spoke up and how I spoke up and being judged. And so when we think about what you just said, it was not the fear of anger because you were honoring your anger privately. It was being judged in how you chose what your truth would be, aside from the role of pastor, to honor your voice. And so these conversations do show us how to honor our voice and not allow the fear of being judged to silence us. That's what I got.
Yep, that's good.
That's where we are. Okay.
That's good.
That's where we are. Thank you so much, Pastor Kim and Kimberly Jones.
All of that, right?
Yes. Did you want to add something before we jump over to Leslie?
I do, really quick. In the book of Matthew, chapter 17, there's a story where Peter, James, and John goes to the Mount Transfiguration with Jesus. And while they're there, they have an experience with God, and Jesus' form begins to transfigure, and he looks different. And Peter says these words, which I think apply to this for me. He says to Jesus, "It is good that we are here. It is good that we are here." And in that moment, he wanted to build a tabernacle there and, account that place as an amazing place of an experience. But long story short, it wasn't for that. It wasn't for that. It was for him to be able to hear and learn, because it wasn't the final place. It wasn't Jesus's last stand. There was more for him to do. And so for me in this place, it's good for me to be here with all of you and in the midst of all of this. But I will not put stakes in the ground here, because this is not where it ends. There's another place and space to go, and that's what I'm pursuing in this hour. But it is good for us to be here.
But you're modeling it too, PK. You're modeling it. If we honor the role of being a student, there are so many people in leadership roles and titles and hats and titles they've given themselves, as well as accolades and people who hide behind them and cannot have a tough conversation without knowing every question that they'll be asked, because at the center of it is self-awareness. And so when we are willing to be vulnerable and willing to not know the answer and still come to the table, to me, that's modeling healing, that's modeling leadership. And I thank you so much. You brought up one question I do have to ask, and I have to ask the panel how much time they will allow, specifically as it pertains to Leslie Renee Briscoe Andrews and Miss Lessie Miller. You just said something though, PK, when you were sharing. You said, basically, let me just bring the question up so we can move forward. If we follow the fear, right, we'll overcome it, is pretty much what you were saying, correct?
Yes.
So we're not going to delve into the other things you were concerned about if you expressed the anger. I want to focus specifically on the judgment piece that you feared. Okay. What's the worst thing that could happen if you expressed your truth with the anger as it pertains to judgment? If you went public and shared it, what was the fear of being judged? What's the worst case scenario if you spoke up and you were judged by your congregation? What would happen? Those who choose
Yeah.
to judge you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've had that conversation with myself in my head.
What did it look
And
like?
like, what could happen? And it's so funny because it has happened. And the worst thing that could happen is somebody doesn't agree with me and I live.
Right. And if they don't agree with you, they may stop supporting your church, right?
Yeah, but that never crossed my mind.
Okay.
But it could.
So what crossed your mind is that they would just disagree, and that was fearful for you.
They would disagree and they would question my faith. They would question my position with God, and that was fearful for me. Yeah.
I want us to follow up. You and I'm going to reach out. I want us to follow up because the anger with the faith piece,
Yeah.
and how we're questioning faith because anger is expressed. How many people are suppressing their truth every day because of the relationship they have, their faith-based relationship, and what it could look like to their family, their coworkers, their friends when they see them honoring God publicly. Thank you so much, PK. You will be hearing from me.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you for speaking up even without all the answers to model what it looks like to be in your truth and to be a student even with the title. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tiara.
Whew. Wow. Leslie, Renee, Briscoe, Andrews, do I need to plan another day or can we continue? And that's the same question that I have for Miss Lessie Miller because it's 9:53 p.m.
We can continue.
Leslie? Okay, if anyone else needs to go, because we know you have demanding schedules, if you could turn your video off and we're going to keep the conversation going, but I hope that you stay with us as long as you can. And I thank you guys for allowing me to also sit in my truth as these questions come up to my heart, and that you're trusting me. You're trusting this platform to be vulnerable. So I can't see what's happening on social media. And I didn't want to. I don't want to be swayed by anything. I don't want any energy coming between our connection. It's me and it's you. Leslie, Renee, Briscoe, Andrews. Thank you so much for saying yes to the invitation within probably less than a minute. The email went out and I got an absolutely yes from Leslie with probably 5 exclamation marks. And I think what's so interesting is that you're in a very, I would say I won't say unique because it's not unique, but you're in a very somewhat fragile, sensitive space. Could you let people know we want to speak about your workplace. How many Black executives work at your company?
I would say on my team that I work with directly, there are 3 of us altogether. On my team in particular, it is me. So I'm a senior buyer for a retail company here in Atlanta, and I am the only senior buyer that is on the team. We have some other Black executives in the planning area, but there are not a lot of us around.
Okay. So if you gave the scope about how many employees in total and how many Black people in
that's hard to say
your
because
team, when you think about the team in that division. Yeah.
in my division, altogether, off the top of my head, I would say 5.
Okay. So Leslie, when the subject of race, before it hit the news headlines recently, what was your workplace like as it pertains to racism, microaggression, being one of 5 or Black people in the building? What did that feel like before the race and inequality hit the news headlines?
I would say, unfortunately for me, it was the norm, basically because of where I grew up, where I went to college, and in my industry, I have always been one of the few. So I wasn't necessarily surprised when I started working there. I was disappointed because we are in Atlanta and it is a mecca. And so I would have expected to see more representation from a company headquartered in that city. So I would say I wasn't surprised by it. I definitely felt that I needed to keep my game high because I was representing, and I was hopeful that more would come. I work with recruiting, with our HR team on recruiting. I'm a recruiting captain. So we talk a lot about how to target more minority candidates to bring into our training program so that it does become a more diverse place. So I think I've always been very active behind the scenes, but definitely not surprised. A little bit disappointed as far as how high I could go because I don't see it around me.
Break that down a little bit, Leslie.
Well, just looking to see how far.
The glass ceiling is there for you?
Correct. So looking to see, when I look at leadership from my viewpoint, there's not anybody of color in leadership, and there are not as many women in leadership. So it's kind of like a double sword.
And you used an interesting term. I don't know if you said bring my game or what word did you use? Is that what you said?
Well, you know me. So my personal mantra is to always walk in excellence, do all things in excellence. And I think that stems from my childhood. Do things well, do better, be smarter, be faster.
And you also said, because I'm representing, that's what you said.
Absolutely, yeah, I'm representing. So I'm very aware when I go into meetings, and I can't say that it's every day, but I can remember a meeting that we had maybe a year or so ago. It was buy time, and we were doing a buy review, and we were in a boardroom, and I was sitting kind of in a back area, but I had to come to the front table to present. And when I walked up to that table and I looked around in that boardroom, I looked and I realized there was nobody of color in that room except me. So that is sometimes their reality. They're not seeing anybody else that looks like me. So I want their impression and what they think of a Black female executive to be on par. So I'm always going to bring my A game, even if I don't feel like I have my A game to give.
Right. And thank you for sharing that. And you speak and teach us about not falling victim to being a perfectionist. Right?
That's hard. Yeah, that's hard for me. I'm a recovering perfectionist.
So do you feel that other women, and I know you can only speak for yourself, but when you think about, I'm the only one, so I'm representing, you are living the life where you present perfectionism because you're representing, because it's not a diverse work setting. And when you leave work, you want to, well, we say the mask, right? But I don't use mask when I'm speaking with someone that I know to be authentic. So when we're using mask in this example, the mask, let's say the mask of representing, bringing your A game, crossing every T, dotting every I, because you don't have a room to be quote unquote less than, on top of your game, perfect, representing, okay? And so when you leave work, because so many women speak about that, how do you then move into just being Leslie without carrying the weight of perfectionism if it's what you have to do so many hours of the day and so many days of the week?
Yeah, so that's the challenge. And I've lived with myself for years of being perfect, being a perfect student when I was in school, when I was in college, and I lived very much by the standard that I always had a goal. So I graduated from high school, and then you go to college, and I graduated in 4 years, and then I get out of college and I get a good job, and then you get married, and then you do all those things. And when I started seeing that I couldn't necessarily achieve all of that, and there were some failures that I had in my life, or what I perceived as failures, I had to have a really heart-to-heart, true conversation with myself and realize I'm killing myself. I cannot do this all the time. I cannot go to work and be perfect and be on top of everything, not forget anything, not be late for anything. Not that those around me aren't late, aren't turning things in on time, and are not always at their A game. I don't miss work. I come in on time. I do what I have to do. I'm a hard worker, not just because I'm a woman of color, but that is who I am. But when I come home, it's hard to turn that off. So then I'm a mom, and I want this perfect child. So I'm taking her to ballet classes. I'm taking her to this. I'm taking her to that. I'm making sure she's involved. We have different organizations we're in. I'm taking her to church. I'm trying to make sure that I have this well-rounded, perfect child. Same thing in a marriage. You know, so then you realize that you are running, and everything is a priority. And then you look in the mirror and you realize that I'm not a priority. So that is my truth, and what I've had to really take a deep dive in and look out for myself, to say it is okay to be authentically who I am. It is okay not to be perfect. It is okay to take a deep breath and exhale and show that I am not perfect. I have flaws. I am perfectly imperfect. And that's been my biggest lesson over the last few years.
And so many people, not just women, can relate to that. Even when they're not the only representative at their workplace, but even more so when they are. You gave us the scope of what that perfectionism looks like as a mom. And you said, now, and I'm also a wife. There are several wives who live this same reality. You and I are both divorced women. You've remarried. So Leslie is married, but she had a marriage previous to Todd. And how does that perfectionism show up in the marriage, Leslie?
I'm sure he would probably like to answer that. But, you know, I am a very structured person, to almost to a bad degree. Very structured, a little bit OCD. So I love order. So, you know, when I get up in the morning, we're going to have breakfast. We're going to start our day off pleasant. We're going to pray. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And then we're going to head to work, and we're going to have a happy day. You know, I'm going to send my daughter off to school with good feelings that she is loved, so that she has a good day. And then I come home after my crazy day of work. And then to me, it's time to sit down, have dinner, you know, do those things, get her ready for bed, homework, that type of thing. And what I've had to realize is that is not reality. And so it was very hard for me in bringing somebody into my life after having been a single mom for so many years, to take two adult lives and merge them together, and then take the good with the bad, and then realize that we had to create our new sense of balance and our new normal.
So do you feel that if you did not have to bring your game and represent, that your load would feel lighter mentally?
There are days. I mean, I think part of it is I am innately who I am. So I can't say that I would be or approach things any differently. I do feel that I have another level of responsibility, though, as a Black woman.
So if we remove that, what would feel different for you?
I might just be able to exhale a little bit and not feel the unseen competition. I think my whole life has always been like there's been this competition, and that I'm always racing to be the best, or be valued, or make sure that I'm contributing, when I think I do that naturally. So I would say I'd probably be able to exhale a little bit.
And Leslie exhaling would operate a little differently, right?
Yeah.
Have you thought about what that would look like?
I just might not be so worried about every detail, you know, not worried about every detail of life, and waking up in the morning like a gun has gone off, like I'm ready to start a race, and I'm making sure I'm checking in my email, making sure I haven't missed anything. You know, I don't know that everybody worries about that before they head to work. I get online before this whole COVID thing happened. before I got in the car to do my commute to work. I got online, I checked the email, I made sure there were no emergencies, nothing was going on. I don't want to walk into craziness. So I'm overly prepared. I always have plan A, B, and C. And maybe I might just have plan B.
Do you feel that other women who are living this same reality and who may say, I definitely feel the extra load with this?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they haven't gone as far in the senior level leadership in a position as you have, or they may not work in the same type of company culture as you do. So women, let's just imagine having 3 times the pressure that you have mentally and trying to take the mask off when she leaves. It seems almost impossible to turn the switch off if you're aware of it and you're saying that it's still hard for you. Do you feel that this could be impacting the foundation of family?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because you bring that home with you. And there are times that I have to stop. I think when my daughter was maybe 4 or 5 years old, and I watched her sit at the kitchen table with her, I don't know, it was a cash register, but she was pretending it was a laptop. And she was like, I've got work to do too, mommy. And I was like, oh, okay. And I started realizing what she's seeing and what I'm creating. And I want better for her. Or when we go on vacation, we went on vacation last year, I think it was, we went to Disney over the holidays. And my daughter said to me, you know what the best thing was about our vacation? And I said, what? And she's like, you didn't work. And I hadn't brought my laptop with me. And I didn't even think she noticed that or paid attention to that. But those little reminders help me know that it's too much. You know, you have to sometimes let your guard down and breathe.
Wow, Leslie, thank you so much for sharing that. What's your advice to other women who are feeling the added weight, the perfectionism, and handling all of the racial, social injustice, inequality conversations when they're the only person to represent an entire race? What's your advice for that woman right now, number one, as it pertains to navigating the workspace, because I feel that you've done that very well through our conversations. But number two, what is it that you would advise her in protecting and valuing her family and protecting and valuing her marriage? I had a conversation with someone very close to me, and he had the option to be promoted, and the demands that came with that promotion would have completely shattered his quality of life. And so for me, being on the outside looking in, it's important that we remember that when we're in these conversations, because we're not really living in your shoes. But my question to him was, you're really going to make a decision and choice on a certain lifestyle or your family? Because the more this increases, you already know they're telling you what that responsibility is. And it was hard because for this person, he wanted to create a different lifestyle and more opportunities for the family, not realizing the damage that would be done by accepting that opportunity. So could you just talk about that? What's your thought process and advice for people who are in that same space?
I think really it's about creating healthy boundaries for yourself, and everybody's are going to be different. And I will tell you that I learned healthy boundaries late in life, within like the last few years. And it's healthy boundaries with work, with people, and being courageous enough to know when there are people that are in your circle that are not healthy for you, or that you have to create a healthy boundary with. So even just in these last few weeks, since we've been working from home, I've gotten into a very unhealthy workspace where I'm online at 7:30 in the morning, and at 7:30 I am still sitting here because I just want to get one more thing done. And we're all working from home, so there are a lot of varying schedules, and you want to make sure you're addressing everybody's needs. But I realized the other day I've got to pull back, because on top of my workload, we're dealing with all of this racial injustice. We're dealing with everything that's going on. Conversations are starting to happen at work. And I am one of the only Black people in my division. And I've worked there for a while. So I have relationships with these people and they feel comfortable coming to me and talking to me. And I really had to think about what my role was in this. And to Monique's point the other night, you know, I might not be ready for the conversation, but the other part of me felt I had a responsibility, because if they can't get an answer from me who they feel comfortable and trust, if I push them away, are they going to just completely shut down? So I've realized at the end of the week that I am exhausted, not just because of my workload, it's crazy, but I'm exhausted because I am pouring into people and I'm trying to explain why I feel the way I do about this, or I'm trying to have the conversation about who Becky is or who Karen is, and that is not necessarily a negative connotation. And we've been having these open conversations. So that has brought on a different level of exhaustion that I really did not understand. I went, like, Friday night came and I just literally had nothing left. I was like, I can't do anything. I can't make the next meeting. I just was done. And I'm not a huge sleeper. And so Saturday morning, I could not get out of the bed. I was like, what is wrong with me? But it was not only a physical exhaustion, it was a mental exhaustion. So I think trying to help the people that you work with see what being a woman of color every day and what you walk in with, in addition to the boundaries and the craziness of work. I'm walking in with, I have a Black husband that I'm worried about. I have a brother. I have a brother-in-law. I have 2 dads. How are they doing in this? I'm carrying all of that with me. I have a 14-year-old daughter who says to me, Mommy, do I need to be concerned or do I need to be afraid that my skin is brown? So in addition to being an executive for a company and having those responsibilities, I'm carrying those weights as well. And that's very heavy. And you want to be there as a wife, as a sister, to support the Black men in your life, as a daughter, because you know the terror and the feelings that they're having. So I felt it very necessary to have a voice and to answer the questions, even when they're difficult, because I want there to be understanding. I want the conversations to happen. I don't want the divide to continue. So I think really trying to find healthy boundaries for yourself and finding the things that bring you peace. So for me, I like to be outside. I like to be in my garden. I love to read. Finding those times for myself. I'm addicted to Pure Barre. So making sure that I schedule myself at least 3 days a week to go get that done and have that release has been very important to my wellness.
Mm-hmm. Leslie, I'm going to go off the cusp and offer advice because you are a mentor, friend, and sister. We go back. We work in corporate America together, rough around the edges, navigating corporate, wearing every emotion on my face. Hence, when I was handed the pink slip, you see, guys, where I've landed. I don't know how long I would have lasted.
You'll be fine.
However, now my perspective is being valued. Now, I think because I've learned some emotional intelligence, I'm going to honor my truth and express it, though, right, in a way that's just not so. Anyway, we'll save those stories for later because it's late. Leslie was the person who loved me enough and cared for me enough without knowing me to pull me aside and have certain conversations with me. Leslie, you speak about healthy boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
You also speak about lots of exhaustion.
I told you I'm a recovering perfectionist.
And so what I'm going to offer to you publicly, just for anybody else who needs this, and we're going to talk, we'll probably talk tonight or tomorrow, knowing that, is that the same way you are just so gifted at mapping out the plan and our time and every responsibility. I have a list on my wall where Leslie just did a video, and it says when you're planning your week and you sit down and do the meeting, you're going to look at the finance bucket, personal care bucket, kids bucket, social collaborations bucket, your wardrobe bucket, fitness bucket, your health and wellness bucket, For me, a personal project. So for me, that's home improvement bucket. Then your friends and family bucket, and your business. So for her, it would be workplace, but for me, it's my business and clients. So that was Leslie when we're sitting to plan the week, and it helps you not miss and have these fire drills, right?
Right.
This
No fire drill.
transformed this, my productivity shot through the roof with her method. And I'm sure you guys can see how it would. And it makes sense why she's at the top of the, the corporation, because she was able to teach us that in 7 minutes. My suggestion as friend and little sister is take those same categories and ask, what healthy boundaries can I apply in every single category for my self-care and my self-love? I'm adding that first when I go down. So not only my to-dos, but also healthy boundaries aren't just the toxic people who are not supporting your peace of mind.
It's true.
And a happy day, to me, that feeds perfectionism if every day we want it to be that happy day. So we're going to push anything away or kind of challenge anything that would stop us from being happy. Or if husband or Remy or Gabrielle, you know, anything that's going to take us out of happy, because we need to be happy because we got a lot on our plate.
We got to be happy.
Right? Honoring all emotions. And a safe space to express them. So when I hear PK and what that does, well, now we have to wait because what faith and what this looks like, I'm actually hearing that in a different way. When I listen to you, it's different, but it's a thread there. And I don't know if it's women, I don't know if men, I don't want to generalize it. I don't think that piece is only race. I think some of it is. I think it does impact it. But when we just look at that mindset, right, and how race just takes it to another level, gender can take it to another level. Healthy boundaries doesn't just look like getting rid of unhealthy conversations and people.
True.
Healthy boundaries and self-love is like safe spaces and authentic spaces and engagement. And I'm even learning this for myself. Right. And so saying yes and saying no, like it's not an automatic yes unless I can't do it. Now it's a yes because it's a true, genuine yes. And I know that's different as an entrepreneur. I do get that, but I'm saying outside of work, that still, it's not a default answer for me anymore. And I don't think that's selfish. So I love you guys. Leslie, I'm calling you. I won't call you tonight. Get your rest. You call me, I'll call, but I'm not calling you. Okay. But thank you for your transparency. And
you're welcome.
Ooh, I didn't expect that. Guys, this is, I want to hear you guys feedback to each other now. So now I'm really like, okay, I'm asking you publicly, can I set a date where we come back together? And it can be our private Zoom where we just debrief and talk and share. But I just have to put that out there because there are certain thought leaders that I wanted to lean on right now for you that I feel are more equipped to help with what Leslie is sharing and vice versa. There's comments, there's dialogue in the chat. Leslie, please look at it. Dave, and you got a whole crew here. So Val, I can't imagine what's going on social media. And we still have another person. So Lessie, it's 10:20. Where are we? Can we keep going or do we need to come on tomorrow? What needs to happen? Unmute Lessie.
I'm good. Tomorrow's not available. So
you are good, Lessie, or you're just going with the flow?
I'm kind of a go with the flow person anyway. You know, I'm kind of laid back. So wasn't always, but that was kind of that self-love piece for me where I just learned to kind of let go. So yeah, I'm letting it flow.
Why did my screen do that? I'm processing and I'm digesting, guys. It's different for me being on this side with the questions as they come up, and to take the information and compartmentalize it and then leave room for the question to come up, organically is it's different because this is new for me with this many thought leaders in this concentrated time, with our objective to listen and have an authentic conversation. This is not scripted. So, Lessie, some honest questions that came up for me is on the first day you were bringing us into your childhood and your reality. Can you, for those people who missed day one, just bring us into that reality, 1 or 2 minutes, what your reality was as a child?
It's interesting after hearing Dave talk about his family, because we share very, very similar backgrounds. We both grew up in the South. The departure that exists with me is that there was kind of a chasm in my family. I had one parent who I never really heard anything racist communicated ever. And I know some prejudices did exist. And I had another parent who was more open about it. And not in a way of not loving other people, but a level of ignorance and a passing down of a conditioning from her own family. And so I've been on this journey for a little while. It became very intense for me in January. As you well know, we've had a pretty deep conversation about it. Rebecca knows quite well my story. And I really took this year to kind of unravel the conditioning of my childhood. And what I've really realized is, although that these messages were around me, it did not change my heart. That's the one thing I've always known about myself. And I'm sorry if I get emotional, because it's really hard to talk about this. I didn't want to be like those people. From the day that I was old enough to understand what was around me, I wanted to leave. My family used to call me their Yankee daughter because I was not of that place. I did not share the same mindset, yet I was in that mindset because that what was being modeled for me.
Can you give us an example, Lessie? I'm sorry. Could you give us?
Well, there are some examples I really don't want, because I don't think it moves us forward. It moves us backwards. But I'll give you an example of growing up in the church, all-white church. And this memory actually came to me this morning. So in the vestibule of the church was a picture of Jesus, and it was white Jesus. And as you go down the steps to the fellowship hall of my church, there was another picture of Jesus, but that Jesus looked more brown to me. And I remember repeatedly seeing that picture. And then when I was required to go through confirmation classes to be baptized in my church, I asked the question, why do we have a white Jesus and why do we have a brown Jesus? Tell me about that. Because in the day of Judea, I don't think that people were white-skinned, right? And the answer back to me was, well, that picture that's on the steps is old and yellowed and has water damage. And that memory came to me today because, I've been doing a lot of writing, as you well know, about my life story. And it in some ways I've taken real moments of my life and I've fictionalized them. But that was so impressionable for me, to be in a place where I was supposed to hear truth and love and equality, love all men, we're all created equal. And to have someone tell me that the white Jesus on the wall was the real Jesus, and the other one was yellowed or damaged. It made me lose a lot of faith in my community. And I think once I left and went to college, probably only stepped in a church maybe a handful of times post that. Because what I really knew deep down inside is that if we're really practicing the word of God and the word of Jesus, we're loving everybody. And so, it's hard to grow up in a place where inside, there's a disconnect to your outer world, and you don't have the framework or the context as a child to really understand why you're feeling that way. And I can't tell you why I came into this world feeling that way. Maybe that's just my journey to be here.
Thank you, Lessie. Thank you for your courage. And I do have some follow-up questions. If at any point you and I don't have the relationship history that Tammy and I have had, and you and I just met in January at Expand. Thank God for that experience and the beautiful Expand sisters that I've connected with very organically. Special shout out to Very and Brandon for Expand. Guys, Lessie and I spoke at Expand, and Lessie shared that she has always felt that racism and inequality was not right, and that she has been writing and wanting to find a way to get the courage to use her voice. So this is different for Lessie. Lessie said yes. This is not something Lessie raised her hand for, but she did say yes. Lessie, I'm seeing a common thread that I want to ask you about. And again, if anything is ever uncomfortable, please let me know, because I value and I want you to always feel safe and respected. Okay. So I'm hearing a thread of fear as well. And I don't know where the fear is coming from. You said you were recognized as the Yankee child. So were you speaking up to some degree with your family? That's one question. And then the follow-up question is, when I asked you to share one experience that was uncomfortable, you said that there's so many, but I don't want to share that because I feel that it moves us backwards. But
well, there is a story I will tell you.
Okay.
But there's some that I just would rather not, because there's language involved and I'm not comfortable.
So without the specifics of the word or whatnot, I guess what I'm trying to get to is, were you forced into situations that you did not agree with and you had to find your voice to speak up? Or were you taking on behaviors that you didn't really agree with to fit in? I'm just trying to understand your reality, Lessie.
I think it was kind of all the above. I think I was always the child questioning the thought processes and not really understanding why I was questioning them. Again, I didn't have the context. And I also became part of that environment in junctures of my life where my thought processes were not healthy and right and just. So I think it's all the above. I think I was a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm. And were you like the 8-year-old that Dave describes that actually asks the questions to the parents? And if so, did you encounter anything that, like, not necessarily abuse, but did you encounter things that silenced you rather empowered you to speak?
Well, the silence is what shut me down.
What reactions were you getting?
Well, the questions were never answered and I knew they weren't being answered in an honest way. It was, we're going to work around the question and not really go in and talk about the question. We're going to give you a nice, polite Southern answer that, you know, because talking about these issues are difficult and they shouldn't be spoken about with children. That was very much the feeling that I got from my family, because I did ask a lot of questions. And as I got older, I had no issues as I've moved around the country, coming home and confronting people on their words and their thought processes. It made me very unpopular in my family.
That's what I'm wondering. So were you shut out? Did you become an outcast with the family?
No, I didn't become an outcast. I think that I slowly just started to pull away and really did not enjoy my visits, because it always felt like this tug of war between ideals. And I did not, you know, it wore me down. And, you know, and it became, at moments, almost a little cruel. How they would make fun of me for my thought processes. And not everyone, there's a certain few. And oh, so now you've become cityfied and now you're gonna challenge us on our ways. It's like, yes, I am. Because I knew in my heart of hearts as a child, this was not the right way to be love in the world. So yeah, it's a real dichotomy. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of, what I've realized through all this writing, there's so much anger that I had. It's like, what gave my family the right to imbue those kinds of values on me, when in my heart, I am love. And I'm undoing all that. And I will not pass it down to my son, and I have not. That's how adamant I feel about this. So I'll tell you a story. I think I was around 15. I was not allowed to date at that point in my life, but my sister, who I'm still very, very, very close with, you know, we've been sisters for many lives, I think. And she was 17, and there happened to be someone in her class who was dating a Black young man. And I think we had always heard rumors around where I grew up that there was a KKK around. I never personally knew any of these people. And this family, who also happened to be part of our church family, had a cross burned on their front lawn because their daughter was dating someone Black. And my dad came to my sister and said, "Is this a thing with you girls now? Because I need to know, because I'm feeling unsafe." And I think what struck me was that he was worried for us and not them. That was the message. I care about my white daughters, but I don't care about the potential of that young man and the danger it put him in. And my sister and I have talked at length about it. So those are the things you have to unravel when it's been a lifetime and you don't want to be that. I don't want to be this, and I don't feel like I am. I've done a tremendous amount of work. It will follow me to my grave. I am open for correction. I am humble, and I'm going to continue to learn. And I'm going to continue to challenge myself and be challenged by others. I won't stop, because I am not going to leave this earth knowing that I did not do everything in my power to be loved and to be an amazing human. That's the pain. So thank you for hearing me. It's a lot.
Thank you, Lessie.
Thank you all. I'm truly honored to be in this space and to grow and learn and to be better. Truly.
Lem, I feel led to turn it over to you. And then Val, I'm going to turn it over to you. And we're going to thank everyone for your courage, transparency, your time, and your willingness to listen. Thank you. Lem?
I mean, where do you even begin? I mean, there was so much passion, so much honesty, and so much truth that was just spoken tonight. I mean, all 3 nights, but definitely tonight, it was about going into a layer so much deeper. And you know what you shared, Lessie, is what this is how we heal generational curse. This is, and I shared in a post that we're not responsible for the families we were born into, but we do set the path for those children that comes behind us. So when we hear about systemic racism, when we hear about whiteness, when we hear about all of the things that we're seeing and we're experiencing, and to know that there's another generation that is actually taking their time to actually address, right? We can talk all day long, you know, in our homes. We can have a public face or a private face, but to take on this curse, this issue internally, and make it our duty to propel the next generation forward and break those generational curses. I think that's the power that you just described. That's what you just expressed, Leslie. And I'm grateful for that. I don't know you, but I'm grateful for that. And, you know, Dr. King said, sometimes when my battle is not with the person, because we have all been programmed and conditioned and have these different stereotypes that we've secondhand knowledge that we've gained, and we form our stereotypes about each other. But he's like, my battle is not with this person that's been programmed, but the idea, that spirit of evil, that spirit that moves through these people. That's what I'm at battle with. That's what we at war with. And what you're saying is, your parents could be loving people with all kinds of love in their heart, but that condition and that spirit, that energy is what we are at war with. That energy is what we are dismantling right now. And that is real work. And what you're doing is you're taking time to do that real work. And for that, I honor and I value and I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. Leslie, I needed to get my emotions together. My face was drenched. I don't have tissues. I've learned something about doing this. I need to have Kleenex. Rebecca was well prepared. I wasn't. Leslie, for me, you represent that woman that's reaching to ask, what can I do from a sincere space? You're the person who reaches, and I don't want you to feel I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't, because someone willing to walk away from their family for what's right and reach for what's right is the only way we're going to make change. And so now, for me, I'm taking what I've learned from each one of you and saying the language, the words, so that we don't do more damage, but we also honor where we are. When I think about Monique and Leslie, and we say, okay, I have had to learn self-love and honoring my emotions. And Leslie saying, I honor a Lessie that's willing to step forward right now, because I don't know what that's like either. And I don't want to then push you away when we need you to be on this side of the conversation of healing. What does that look like? Because we don't want Leslie exhausted and shelving her self-care and her health. So now this conversation has allowed us to get to that space where what I see is just the language to honor what you need in a way that's not, I don't care what you need. I don't care what you feel. I don't care if you even have good intentions. I don't know if that would help us, but if it's, I can't do it right now. I think I heard Monique say, not now. I'm still honoring and trying to figure out where I am. Okay, so that's what I'm hearing. An honoring of self and an authentic person, Lessie, and what I'm hearing is, and I touched on this, if you're authentic and it's genuine, that's not going to cause a pain and more of a divide for someone to say, I'm not ready for that conversation, or now is not a good time, right? I believe an authentic person can handle that. Someone looking to be a hero, someone looking to wave a flag and say, look at me, I love Black people, I would never do this, may take offense to someone saying, no, not right now, I'm still honoring me. So thank you, Lessie, for your heart. I felt your heart. I felt your heart as if we were two girls on a playground, and you would be so upset if you're like, but that's my friend. Can you think about two little children who don't even have the concept of race yet? Just say there's an introverted child that feels invisible already, right? And then they meet a Black, bubbly, socialite child, and they're like, Lessie, 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 oh my God, you can draw, Lessie, you tell the best stories. Lessie, Lessie, Lessie. Now Lessie's empowered. Leslie's not looking at race because they're not conscious of that yet, right? Or let's just say they're not before they become conscious of it. And Leslie's going home, oh my God, this is my best friend. She said I could draw, she loved the show. She's coming to life. That conversation is getting shut down based off what Lessie just shared. I don't know what that conversation is like when Lessie goes back to school. I can't talk to you anymore. My dad said I can't talk to you anymore. And so we have to think beyond even the surface of where we are right now and have these conversations and get to the root. And I honor you, Lessie. Thank you for doing the work. Thank you. I honor every single one of you for stepping forward this very public conversation. We have family, we have friends, we have workspace. PK talked about it, judgment, assumptions. We said, forget all of that. I am who I am, and I don't have all the answers. So we're not here to give answers. We were here to listen, and I thank you. Valerie, I am going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Tiara. There's a quote by Renee Brown from her book, Rising Strong, and it says, vulnerability is not winning or losing. It's having the courage to show up and be seen when we have no control over the outcome. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's our greatest measure of courage. So vulnerability looks like Leslie Renee Briscoe Andrews. Vulnerability looks like Monique Russell. Vulnerability looks like Kimberly Jones, Pastor Kimberly Jones. Vulnerability looks like Rebecca Davidson with a D. Vulnerability looks like Lessie Miller. Vulnerability looks like Lem, the life, LaRoche. Vulnerability looks like David Steele. Vulnerability looks like Dr. Maureen Tong. Vulnerability looks like Tammy Flynn. Vulnerability looks like Valerie Paul. Vulnerability looks like Tierra Destiny. When I think about this entire conversation, here's what I would love for all of us to take away. Healing begins when we first educate ourselves. Healing begins when we admit our reality. Healing begins when we expose ourselves to the unfamiliar. Healing begins, Monique, when we choose to take care of ourselves.
Yes.
Healing begins when we take on a challenge, no matter how difficult it may be.
Mm.
So my question to all of us tonight is, will you accept the call? Will you accept the call? Tierra?
Thank you does not feel like enough. But thank you. Thank you for saying yes. Every time you've said yes. This isn't the first time. We've all said yes. Many times to get to this point together, and I thank you. I thank you for having the courage. I thank you for being vulnerable. Valerie, that was a powerful quote. I wanted to ask if you could read that entire quote again, and I want to ask people to share this out because it's powerful. It's not about overthinking how and who it's meant for. It's not about that. And we are going to send an email out with the contact information that's provided by each thought leader for people to reach out to you. So they can visit tierradestinyread.com and enter their email address to continue to connect with each of you and to get information on the next conversation. Valerie, can you please read that quote one more time?
Thank you, Tierra. Absolutely. Vulnerability is not winning or losing. It's having the courage to show up and be seen when we have no control over the outcome. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's our greatest measure of courage.
Thank you. And on that note, we have definitely fulfilled our objective, not as individuals, as a collective. We don't have to sit on the same side of the street. We don't have the same address. We did not have the same upbringing. But one thing that each of us have is respect and the ability to listen. Thank you so much. You guys have a great night. Bye-bye.